Hello there, this is Critical from Critical Media. Just taking a look at the Batman Earth 1 series from Geoff Johns and Gary Frank from 2012, 2015, and 2021. What we usually do with this channel is just give you an idea of what to expect when you come across these books in the wild. So we go over the exterior, some bonus material, art and plot points, and then a brief review at the end. However, we're going to skip the bonus material part because, to be honest, there's actually not much bonus material at all in these two books, and even this one just has half a page of bonus material, so that's predominantly why we're going to skip it this time. Also, if you're not familiar with the Earth 1 series, essentially DC had this idea of coming out with these characters, but in a much more believable sense. So, what if they existed in our world? So, with that in mind, they take a much more visceral, perspective. Not to mention, they have real-world consequences to their actions, even in Superman, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and to a much lesser extent, Teen Titans. But that's a whole other story. Anywho, in terms of these releases, yes, they are very consistent throughout the entirety of the Earth ones. So they tend to have a matte with gloss figure image on the front and an embossed design on this black area here. So just to give you an idea for volume 1, volume 2, same idea. And of course volume 3 most recently. There you go. And at least to see them on their spines, once again, very consistent, so they'll line up on your bookshelf pretty well, assuming you're going to pick them up. No, this isn't sun damage. The volume 1 was intentionally darker, or should I say more gray, whereas the other two are more saturated blue. And yes, you may notice that the older DC badges are there. I got these as they came out, so, or at least as they debuted. They have been reprinted and tend to have more consistent badges with the third volume, but just for your own knowledge there. Now, at least looking at volume 1, I guess because it's more of a real world take, remember, it's basically playing out a lot like Batman Year One. So he's just starting out, and he's far from the best crime fighter. He's far from the best detective, and he's just far from being accomplished. He just has the drive and the vengeance going for him. And I like this opening panel because it serves as kind of a metaphor for the rest of the subsequent series, where he's chasing down a hood across rooftops. The hood makes it across a building, tries his grappling hook at first. Hey, sometimes things don't work out as you expect, just like in the real world, it jams up. He tries to jump it himself, but he doesn't make it. And I love how this actually kind of serves as that metaphor. I'll bring it up a little bit later. And yes, it's kind of jumps back and forth with, how Alfred came into his life and whatnot. So this is where you get that traditional Batman origin story. This is a much different take on Alfred, where he's more of a ex-soldier as opposed to being a war medic. So yeah, he's seen some things. He has a much more grittier sense of life and justice. And in that light, that's actually how he knew Thomas Wayne. Thomas Wayne was his medic. And at least when he first meets with him again, as you see, Bruce is already of the right age. And yeah, it's basically Thomas vying for the mayor candidacy of Gotham, right? And yeah, everything's looking good. But of course, what happens. Yeah, we've all seen this unfortunate story before. And unlike many iterations of Alfred's relationship with Bruce, this is the first time they've met each other. So he's more of the reluctant guardian this time round. I mean, yeah, they even have like an antagonistic origin to their relationship. Who the hell are you? That kind of thing. And almost in a comedic sense, I'm your brother. I love that. And ironically, the person that Thomas Wayne was up against for, the mayor of Gotham was actually Oswald Cobblepot. So I like how they flip things in a realistic sense where, yeah, Oswald Cobblepot, he's always more of the gangster style of Batman rogue. That's why he never goes to Arkham. He usually goes to Blackgate because he's not really considered insane. And so I like how it kind of fits this story here just the same as well. And also, we're introduced to a much more haggard version of Gordon. Yeah, you're going to get a little bit of Babs here. I love Babs. Batgirl's one of my favorite characters, period. But yeah, I like how you see that more deconstructed version of him, and we're given such an opulent version of Harvey Bullock. You know, he's like in this, he's just coming to Gotham. He's like a TV detective. Nobody takes him seriously, thinking he's a good detective because he's on TV. So he comes to Gotham of all places to try and prove his worth, right? That he is a good dude. But nonetheless, unfortunately, reality's gonna hit him pretty hard too. That's what I like about this series. Like every character goes through many more dimensions than the usual. And also another angle of this series is that they go with the idea that Martha Wayne is actually Martha Arkham, and that Bruce is basically the union of the Waynes and Arkham, so he's half and half. And at least in the lore of this story, it's inferred that the Arkhams have this unfortunate history of mental illness in their families. So in that light, it's always this always burden that he's trying to overcome. But nonetheless, yeah, you're even introduced to some early Easter eggs that they start up with here. Jessica and Harvey Dent. And it's your typical overprotective brother kind of situation there. But anywho, it's a constant situation where Bruce always wants to, I guess, jump through hoops to be the Cape Crusader, but it's always Alfred trying to ground him, saying, "No, man, you're not ready for out there. I can beat you down, and I'm, with a cane here." So always appreciate that. And I like how there's proper explanations to things. So his first meeting with Lucius, as I mentioned earlier with the grappling hook, there's a reason why he wants to meet Lucius, that kind of thing. And yeah, it's definitely a much more grittier take on things. As I mentioned earlier, Harvey gets a real nasty dose of reality here. And yeah, there's your take on Cobblepot this time round. Looks much more normal, just a longer nose than normal, I guess. And yeah, he is your typical corrupt bureaucrat, so to speak. And I love how, unlike most iterations where it's Batman and Gordon are, usually starting off pretty strong. In this, well, things don't start off that well, let's just put it that way. But that's probably as much of the plot points I want to reveal at this point. I mean, probably the only other thing I would mention is the other antagonist, the birthday boy. I think they call him Ray Salinger in this. Yeah, there he is. Wow, that's amazing. I got to that page. I love this particular page because Gary Frank, I mean, throughout the entire series, you're going to discover he's very good at, proper photorealistic anatomies, very believable imagery, and great staging. Like, this does play like a movie. Each book does. But man, I love this particular silhouette here. And yeah, throughout the series, it will reach its climax, of course. I like how the ending doesn't go the way you think. And each series kind of leads into the next. So the final pages of this lead into Volume 2's antagonist. Gee, I wonder. Now, speaking of Volume 2, Volume 2 is probably my favorite of these three books. So, as kind of inferred just now, yes, it's all about the Riddler this time around. And man, oh man, the Riddler is so amazing in this book. Clearly, this is my favorite of the three. He's so ruthless in this book. Sometimes he just doesn't give people a chance. He asks them a riddle, give me the riddle, you don't tell me, I'm not playing around. And I love his vicious intensity in this book. Like, it's very on point in that sense. But like I mentioned earlier in that metaphoric image from Volume 1, where he had to jump across the building while chasing a hood, just like that, they referenced the very same imagery. New hood he's chasing, similar situation jumping across the building. He doesn't even whip out the grappling gun. Not only does he clear it, he clears it and cracks the guy at the same time. Love that. So I definitely appreciate that through the artwork you give that stage of evolution and building of a character. So I love that they managed to nail it. In that light, they don't really tell you how many months have gone by since Volume 1, but either way, it's, I guess, kind of irrelevant. You just know that time has progressed in that sense. And as I mentioned, they did sow the seeds earlier where, yes, Jessica and Harvey Dent are more bigger players in this story. They're the two DAs of Gotham. And you'll see a lot of references, like Maroni and whatnot. And it's just a constant growth of each character, or should I say, I guess, the evolution of each character. Because, yeah, you'll see Gordon here. He's more of the gray haired, he's been promoted, whereas Harvey is more the Harvey Bullock that we know, where, he's getting more and more loose, but he's becoming more of a recluse at the same time. So, definitely appreciate that they go with that angle. Yep, there's Jessica Dent again being reintroduced. And throughout the series, yeah, you're gonna meet some other Batman rogues. Like they'll kind of hint toward them, but they don't actually say their name out loud or anything like that. But I definitely appreciate that they do the whole Waylon Jones thing. Oh yes, speaking of which, very chance meeting there. Yeah, there we go. I love that they do Killer Croc in a much more humble light this time around, more of a sympathetic character. So definitely appreciate that they went in that direction. And like I mentioned, like the lighting and the overall, I guess, just the impressive nature of Gary Frank's work. I love this particular page because, yeah, you could tell I've seen the pencil version of this, but man, the colorist really nailed it. It just really comes off convincing, this lighting here. So very on point. And yeah, throughout the series, you're constantly getting Riddler just straight up being a terrorist. Like he gets to a point where he's just straight up ruthless. I know I mentioned it earlier, but I've never seen the Riddler more serious ever in a book than in this series here. So definitely appreciate that. Yeah, far more of a serious take, that's for sure. And yeah, at least there's a few two-page spreads as you saw earlier with the Killer Croc page, but I'm just showing one more toward the 75% mark just to give you an idea how much gutter loss you might expect. Yeah, there is a bit, but it doesn't take away from the imagery, at least thankfully in that sense. So very on point in that light. And similar to Volume 2, where, he kind of hinted in, similar to Volume 1, where he hinted he needed a grappling hook. In this book, he hinted he needed a better car. So that's kind of the seeds that sow in this book. Now, for Volume 3, this one, personally, for me is like more the weakest of the trilogy. Mainly because a lot of the setup or a lot of the, I guess, suspense, they ruined it in Volume 2. Because you already kind of knew what was going to happen anyway in this book. Especially with the prose in which Geoff Johns decided to go with. The dialogue is still strong. It's just that the story is just beyond the word predictable. Like, more predictable than an episode of a TV show sometimes. So in this book here, the main antagonist this time around, it's going to be Two-Face. And in that light, yeah, thankfully I didn't show too much of Volume 2 for you to get an idea. But it introduces like Jeremiah Arkham in the beginning. And you're wondering, wait, what? Bruce's grandfather is somehow alive? But yeah, as we get through it here, it's more of a, a character growth aspect. So, once again, you see that now Killer Croc's more of a part of the team. He's actually a pretty good ally, actually. And yeah, throughout the series, you're noticing that there's a new crime boss out there. He's way too successful. Yep, it is, in fact, Two-Face that's running the show. But they're wondering how is that even possible, considering the events of Volume 2. But either way, yeah, throughout the series, like I mentioned, he got a new toy, but he's always looking for something new. And in this case, he's more so looking for allies instead of just gadgets. Because yeah, he's realizing one man can't do this. It has to be like a concerted effort. But man, can't help but think that's so in McLaren F1. But anyways, that's all besides the point, right? Yeah, probably my favorite image of this entire book, though. Almost this book's saving grace right here. Man, what perfect dialogue to match it to. You're really pissing me off tonight. But either way, the story does play out. I will say this. It's still well written. It's unfortunate that that was really the linchpin of the story. I feel like Geoff Johns should have went with a much more, I guess, surprising aspect. There is one character, I won't spoil who it is. There is one character in this book that's surprisingly in it, I didn't think they were going to go in that direction, and they did. But hey, I'm definitely down. Oh yeah, Killer Croc in the dog scene. Love it. Bat Dog, as he calls him. But another aspect of this book I wasn't too much of a fan of was the design of Catwoman in it. Yes, I understand. Catwoman, I've seen her in many different costumes. Yes, she's worn purple. Yes, she's worn pink. It's just that this one does not, it really does leave you wanting more, or at least better design philosophy. Because, man, it just doesn't come off well. I don't know what it is. Plus, I'm going to mention this now, I guess, now that we're at Volume 3. I like Gary Frank's work a lot. However, there's something about him when he draws female characters that he obsesses over the nasolabial, aka the area just between the cheek and the lip. It ends up creating this almost masculine appearance of female characters, and it always kind of bothered me. It's something that he's known for. Like, he does it not just in this, he's even doing it in another series like Geiger and whatnot. But it's just something that, if I ever had a gripe about Gary Frank, that would be the only one. Otherwise, I love everything else he does. But yeah, ultimately, like, the story, even at its climax, it does go for more of a personal touch, but I feel like it does miss the mark. But it doesn't stop from probably one of the best images ever. This is so damn haunting. This particular page here, man, oh man, creepy as hell. Like, shock my dreams kind of thing. And yeah, you do get a little bit of future nods like Toyman and whatnot. And the story does end with another character being kind of hinted at. For folks who've read it, I would turn the page and show you. But maybe let's leave it a surprise for folks who might be still interested. But let's just put it this way. The way that this book was at least trending, I kind of hope that Volume 3 is the finale of it. I don't feel they need to make a fourth. After all, Superman stopped at 3, Wonder Woman stopped at 3, Green Lantern is actually still expected to have another title. But yeah, let's just leave Batman with these 3. Because yeah, 2 really strong entries. The third, in my opinion, not the strongest. Hopefully you guys have a better opinion of it. But hey, it's not about me ultimately at the end of the day. I do these more so that you guys know what to expect if you ever come across these. But hey, hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope to see you guys there. Take care.